In this episode,
I'm Adam at 35Who, and we're going to talk about Arsenal.
The Fantasy Football Show.
hello listeners, welcome to episode 9 of the 30 in 30 from Planet FPL. My name's Suj.
My name is James.
And whilst everyone's taken a chill from football, we've decided to record 30 podcasts in 30 days. We're up to day 9 now, James.
Yeah, it's like a third of the way nearly.
Yeah, I feel like by the end of today, which is actually a few days before go live on this one, we'll be a third of the way through. And yeah, it's hard work.
Yeah, but it's fun.
It is fun.
Fucking enjoying it.
Really talking to a lot of FPL players and who specifically have been writing for us for various clubs. Today, we have none other than at 35Who, Adam, who is our gooner in residence. Yeah. Adam, how are you?
Yeah, I guess given the footballing circumstances, I'm not doing too bad. I'm alive, that's one thing.
Disappointing week last week, but I'm sure we're going to get into it. You were the second most, you fucking hell, let me go, where's that? You wrote the second highest number of articles for us last season. So hats off to you. Yeah. I think it would have been hard to beat at 6 goal Stephen Toomey with Watford because he was rapid with his articles, week in, week out, 2 a week, but very closely followed. So thank you for all of your hard work last season. Really appreciated. Gooners, where do we start? I really do not want this to be a miserable, downhearted copy-paste of Arsenal Fan TV.
This should be the best podcast of the lot. That's my feeling, so no pressure, Adam. Adam, let's start with you. We'll come back to Arsenal. Let's start with you and who you are, and talk us a little bit about your history as an FPL manager.
And I also want to know about the Twitter handle.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. The terrible Twitter handle.
You don't have to tell us
sorry
if you don't
about
want
that. But no, it's just I like puns. Anyone who follows me on Twitter knows I'm a fan of a pun. And it was at the time when everyone was playing the 3-5-2 formation.
Right.
It was a couple of years ago now. And it was the first pun that I thought of, and I didn't really think I'd ever do anything like this where people would actually be interested in what I was saying. So I didn't think of social media friendly names at the time, and just went with that really.
It's not a bad name. I think that sounds similar to me and Jay's. We never thought anyone would listen to us either, to be honest.
Do they?
They have a lot. How long have you been playing FPL?
Yeah, in terms of... Sorry, how long have I been playing FPL?
Yeah.
So my first season was back in 2012, 2013, but that I don't really think that counts because looking back at my rank, it was 2.5 million, and I reckon there were about 3 million players back then. So I think my first proper season, I would say, was 2014, 2015. Mm-hmm. That was when I started actually thinking, okay, yeah, I'll care a bit about this. Just when me and some school friends put £1 into a mini league and said, okay, the winner gets it all. And I thought, okay, now there's money on the line. I'll actually try a bit harder. And I think that season I finished around 42k overall.
Decent.
And then since then, it was a bit of a drop off the next couple of seasons. I was about 140k and then 180k. And then last season, when I started listening to podcasts, I suppose, and started engaging more in the Twitter community is when my rank noticeably improved. So last season I was 31k, and I think this year I was around 55. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess you could say it was all down to you guys because I did start listening to you last season. So
this guy thinks he's getting fucking paid or something.
Yeah.
I was going to say, the check's in the post already, right?
Cheers, pal. That's consistent finishes there, mate. So last 6 seasons all inside the top 200k, and you've got 3 of the last 6 seasons inside the top 60k. It's good.
Yeah, really consistent. Like anything inside the top 100k for me is a pipe dream because I've never made it.
Told.
Next season's going to be my first season breaking the top 100k. for sure.
Is there anything as an FPL manager, Adam, that you particularly stick to in terms of the way you sort of treat transfers, your formations, players you go to or don't go to?
I think I try my hardest not to be too emotional in my decision making. So there have been times when I've been burned by, I think it was getting out. It was around the time when everyone was getting in Dean or Digne or however you want to say his name.
Lucas.
Yes, Lucas, but not the Mora one. When he got that red card, and I was really tempted to get rid of him, but I didn't. So I think this season that's something I've consciously tried to do, is be less emotional in terms of getting rid of players and sticking by my guns, really. Like if I've got a gut feeling about a player, even if he's not as much on the radar or people on Twitter aren't talking about him as much, I guess I just stick to what I know and trust my instinct in general, and that's not really served me too far wrong so far.
We don't talk about the emotions of an FPL manager enough, I don't think, in terms of influences external, internal, and what leads to because I think during the course of the season, most of us will make decisions through influence, and most of us will make decisions because we've got that real single-minded nature to want to make a decision we believe in. It's interesting how at certain times that will fluctuate. I think confidence might play a part in that, in terms of if you've had red arrows recently, are you therefore looking externally at what other people are doing?
Yeah, maybe trying to be a bit more defensive.
Yeah,
to stop,
possibly.
Stop.
Or sometimes if you get in, I know I've had it where you get in a spiral of red arrows and you start thinking, you get over emotional and that turns into like trying to be too aggressive.
Absolutely.
So you just start thinking, oh, I've got to stop the rot.
Yeah, it can be difficult.
Should we talk about the Gooners, mate?
Oh God!
Or do you just want
talking about something that's difficult?
Do you want to not? Because
we haven't got a
when we put together the correspondent idea, sort of back end of spring last year, one of the key driving goals for me was to find a Gooner who was completely non-Arsenal fan TV and not find someone that we would just go and insult and take the piss all year round. You are quite level-headed, mate. Other than even I felt like giving you a cuddle after the Europa League final, some of the tweets you were sending out, Jesus. Talk to me a little bit about your Arsenal fandom and where it originates from.
Well, I suppose I was sort of, you could say I'm a glory hunter in a way, because when I was growing up and sort of first becoming conscious of football was when Arsenal were really, really good. So sort of this early noughties, obviously the Invincibles was around that era as well, and the cup, the league and cup double winning side was sort of around when I was really beginning to get engaged in football. And I just loved some of the players that were on display. We were playing really quite intelligent football at the time, not necessarily always easy on the eye, but you had players like Perez and Lundberg,
Vieira.
You could tell had the sort of understanding of the game that you didn't really see in many other players. And then obviously they had just like unbelievable technique and talent. And yeah, I suppose ever since I really got engaged when I was probably about 7 or 8, when I went to my first Arsenal game, and like ever since then I've just been hooked, I suppose.
I remember that Invincible season.
I don't.
I was around 22, 23 at the time. My youngest brother, he's only 11 or 12. He's 10 years younger than me. And I remember taking him to the pub to watch the game against your lot, where Arsenal were going to win the league if they won the game or whatever. Yeah. It was a draw in the end, right? 1-1, if I remember. Mm-hmm. And my youngest brother then, he wasn't that into football. I was like, come and watch a proper team. This Invincibles team is a real team. And I remember dragging him to the pub. No one else came with it. No one else wanted to watch that game for some reason, but watching it and expecting Arsenal to win. They didn't in the end. However, I've always had a soft spot for Arsenal, because I think even in the 90s, Manchester United were ruthless, and they were a real machine. But Arsenal were that first team that then did it with style. United played; they were really good. They scored a lot of goals, but I just think Arsenal had a certain je ne sais quoi French style about them.
It was a new brand, wasn't it? And I
It
think
really was.
It was a frightening team. I can promise you, as a Spurs fan at the time, it was a frightening team to play against. What they had really well at that time was they obviously had that English core defensively.
Yeah.
And I think it was the first team where fans felt a real belonging to a team that had so many foreign players in it.
Yep.
So these people like Vieira, Petit, Perez, Lundberg, Overmars, Bergkamp, etc., and then later obviously Henry, etc. They really built into the ethos idea of what Arsenal's backbone was, and they added all the sprinkling of the stardust, and the fans felt like, I think those players, in comparison to some of the current players, felt like although they were from overseas, they really felt like they were a part of it. And you mentioned obviously United games. In 20 years, people will still be talking about them United Arsenal battles.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They were,
mate. Yeah, for sure.
And that was where beauty meets the beast. But even Arsenal were rough in those. Like Arsenal were up for those.
They
games
had the edge, didn't they?
Well.
You think, all these players like Lundberg, Parla, Vieira, they all had like spikiness about them. Bergkamp weren't shy to fucking elbow someone in the face.
No.
Even the great Thierry Henry, he was a bit of a sod at times as well. He had that ruthless winning desire, and I think that translated into sort of how he conducted himself off the pitch. He was a bit of a diva apparently behind the scenes.
Mate, if I was as good as him, I'd be a diva. 100%.
What a player! I mean,
he's my favourite Premier League player of all time. Is Thierry Henry, without a doubt. Left foot, right foot, pace. Just do some of the goals he scored were fantastic.
I wouldn't say favourite, but I would go and say best Premier League player I've seen.
Who's your favourite? Lenny King, obviously.
Not Sol Campbell.
Adam, cut that shit.
We had a podcast yesterday, and James couldn't even mention that guy by name.
I didn't mention it.
That guy that left us 18 years ago to move across the road was what you called him. I remember. He can't even say his name.
Yeah, no. I'm just thinking in terms of. I mean, I would say Ronaldo, Cristiano is probably the second best footballer I've seen. But in terms of physically in the Premier League, I think you'd be very hard pressed to look past Henry. There was some move, probably in terms of like your Giggses and stuff, one more on that. But Henry, for probably the first 5-6 years of the noughties, wasn't a better striker on the planet.
No, for sure. Do you think? Are you happier at the end of this season than you were at the end of last season? I suppose I'm asking. Do you feel like you've made progress?
Fucking hell, what a question again.
Because if you look at it on paper,
that is actually a really good question.
Your away form's still shite. Your league position's pretty much the same. You're not in the Champions League. It's the same as last season. So on paper, you haven't made progress per se.
Well, see, I suppose that's where I'd slightly disagree. Is because on paper, I think if you look at the hard facts, we're a place higher and we went a round further in the European competition that we're in. So I suppose from that perspective, we have made some form of progress.
Sure.
But I suppose if you want to ask, am I happier? I don't think I am, but only because at the end of last season, there was a blank canvas and I sort of had a sense of, okay, this could be maybe not the start of something really good, but I could see the beginning foundations being laid for a future that could see us challenging for the Premier League maybe. And I know in the situation we're in now, that sounds kind of naive and stupid, but it did feel with Wenger moving on, it felt like a weight off my chest, because as an Arsenal fan, you have that debate constantly. Should he stay? Should he go? And it's hard to have that without being too reactionary, I think, at times. But I think there was a sense at the end of last season that all the fans could unite around what came next. And now we're sort of just seeing those same divisions that were the Wenger in, Wenger out divisions re-emerging in the form of Emery in, Emery out, Ozil in, Ozil out, and
Kroenke,
all that kind of stuff.
Well, Kroenke's only one camp, isn't it? Kroenke out, let's be honest.
Yeah, nobody wants Kroenke in. It's more of a begrudging acceptance that he's here to stay. And I suppose that's another reason to feel less optimistic, and perhaps why back to your question, I don't feel as happy because now he's he's got 100% ownership of the club. So this summer will be the first summer where it's solely owned by KSE.
Yeah.
And he hasn't put in a single penny of his own money into the club. And I think that goes underreported sometimes because Arsenal have generally done very well. He's never put any of his own money into us.
Yeah.
And in fact, at times he's taken stipends out of the club. I think it was 3 or so years ago, he took about £4 million or something like that out of the club. And coincidentally, around the same time, the Rams, his American sports franchise, moved cities completely, and they're now building a new stadium. So, yeah, there's definitely a sense as an Arsenal fan of, I suppose, a little bit of fear, really. I am quite scared.
You could easily... See, the thing is, when I look at the likes of City and then some of the other clubs, including these up the road at Spurs, what's happening at Wolves, etc., having the money is all well and good, but it's the infrastructure that goes... It's the culture of the club and the infrastructure from top to bottom, which is the backroom staff, which is the training, it's the youth, etc. And Arsenal, I feel, on one side, have so much of the foundations to really kick on, which is one of the highest grossing stadiums in the league, if not the highest. I don't know, Spurs may overtake that next season now, but money's not a problem. So your location is there, fan base is really loyal, and I think the Arsenal brand globally is really strong. But then on the flip side, you don't seem to have that kind of... If you look at Manchester City, they're a well-oiled machine. I don't feel like Arsenal at the moment, with the current director of football and scouting and the culture within the players, is a well-oiled machine. So on one side, you do have half the foundations, but and that's where I think, I don't know, all fingers point at Kroenke, right?
Well, yeah, I suppose that's the interesting thing is that after Wenger, because he was basically a one-man club hierarchy, so he did all the jobs that your modern football clubs have sort of 3, 4, 5 guys doing. So now we supposedly had this new infrastructure with Raul Sanllehi and Sven Mislintat over the summer, and even Gazidis. They were going to be the sort of 3-pronged triumvirate that was supposed to take over the responsibilities that Wenger did for so long. And then Gazidis buggers off to Milan. Sven Mislintat leaves in January or February because he was having serious disagreements with some of the people behind the scenes. And now we're in the position where we've got Raul Sanllehi, he's the sort of contracts wheeler-dealer guy at Barcelona for a while. We've got another executive called Vinay something, I can't remember his surname. And we're in the process of bringing in Edu, our ex-player, who is now supposed to be our director of football type. So it felt like last summer we had all these structures in place, and now we're effectively replaying that all over again. We're having to start from scratch again, building this new sort of hierarchy.
Do you think
that's fucking grim, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
I know. And I could make it even worse if you really want me to.
Yeah, go on, mate.
Talking about the fan. Well, you were talking about the fans, Suj, and how you were saying they're quite loyal. But I think...
Maybe not loyal, but you've got a big fan base. North London-based club, global fan base.
But I think you guys will both know, in London, there's with ticket prices, it's obviously really difficult for a lot of quote-unquote regular people to go.
Yep.
And increasingly, football's becoming more of a tourist attraction, and it's like going to the theatre was, I suppose, back in the day, where you go to be entertained rather than support the team.
Your club, yeah.
And I think that, combined with the fact that there's quite a lot of disheartened Arsenal fans, and increasingly people I've noticed online that I talk to who are really, really engaged in previous years, they've sort of moved beyond anger. It's becoming like apathy, really. They just can't really be fussed anymore.
Yep.
It's like, oh, Arsenal were playing. Yeah, I'll watch that on TV. Oh, we win. Oh, that's good. Oh, we lose. Oh, well. And then move on with their day.
Which kind of heartens on to... We need to talk about it a little bit. the media channel.
Yeah. Okay.
Should I just let you shoot, mate? Because obviously,
You mean AFTV?
Yeah, obviously.
Okay,
right?
just checking. I didn't know which
I mean, they're as a brand that's bigger now than a lot of football clubs in this country.
Yeah.
That media
Yeah.
channel,
Yeah.
it's huge, and people are watching it to fucking take the piss out of your football team, mate. So you know, we all know when Arsenal lose, their views
It's a bit of entertainment.
go through the fucking roof, right? Nobody other than Arsenal fans want to watch it when they win. Nobody's tuning in.
Yeah.
So, but it has created this idea of a culture of what an Arsenal fan is. Now, I know that's not the reality, but where do supporters like you feel on them and their role, which is not going away, around the football club?
I suppose it's embarrassment, really, I suppose, because that's, like you say, that's the public image that people have of Arsenal fans, is these guys who their first reaction when something bad happens is to put a camera in someone's face and monetize it effectively. They're monetizing people's anger, and then to a certain extent that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because these people live off AFTV, they live off the views. So I think a lot of, and I've got no proof, I can't get inside their head, but I think a lot of them play up their anger and play up their emotions because they know, like you say, no one wants to watch Arsenal fan TV when we win. You only watch it to see the hilarious rants and stuff like that. So they sort of become pantomime villains in a way. So they're like playing up for the camera. And it's just, I just get really tired of watching it. I don't watch it anymore, like at all. I watched it right at the start when there was some sort of genuine interest and you did feel like, okay, this is a group of regular Arsenal fans who go every week and are having like discussions and debates and that kind of thing. But now it's, I hate
Become
it.
a bit of a caricature of itself.
Well, they're all personalities now, aren't they?
Of course. I mean, Adam and
Yeah.
I, we sat next to each other at the Football Blogging Awards, right? What was it, about a month ago or what have you, when he was always cheating on us. But
Yeah, about that.
we'll talk about that another time. But obviously, we were there at the Football Blogging Awards. Who won football personality or what football influencer was like Troops? Who won best podcast was AFTV. Who won best this, that, and the other? It was the AFTV Young Guns. It was the all. They won 5, 6, 7 awards out of like 12 or 13 awards. And but I think to play devil's advocate a little bit, but not much. They do go week in, week out to watch their team, and I do think they are genuine fans of the club, and I think they have some footballing knowledge and understanding. They're not completely. I feel like what could have been, if they toned it down a little bit or just made it a little bit more sensible and football focused, there is the makings of something interesting that people may want to listen to or watch there. But they have kind of that comedy element does.
It goes
come
both
into a little
ways,
bit
right?
too much.
Because a lot of other clubs, and so there are people who film at Spurs, and there's people who film at Chelsea, definitely United, Liverpool. A lot of the big clubs are getting this sort of coverage now, but you're not seeing it in the mainstream.
No, not at all.
Like Arsenal. And I think that's because of the people that they're having on their content.
Yeah.
And the outlook in terms of a lot of other clubs and to be fair, they've done amazing, right, with what they wanted to do. They're massive. A lot of other clubs are looking at it now and going, we don't want our fan base to be perceived like that.
Yeah.
And so no one else is going down that route.
No. It's interesting. You know, this kind of conversation we're having around the structure of the club's changing and the culture's changing. Do you think that's translated onto the pitch in terms of the way that Arsenal play? Because obviously personnel, it's hard to have the personnel like Fabregas, Vieira, Petit, whoever else was playing at that time for one-touch, fast-moving football. But I also feel like the Arsenal identity on the pitch is not what it used to be 5-7 years ago. I mean, I suppose you can see it clearly because they're not in the top 4, top 2. But I still always look at Arsenal and think, are you going to play that free-flowing, fast-moving, tiki-taka, whatever you want to call it, football? I feel like it's disappearing away. And if it goes, it goes. Eventually, Arsenal will no longer be playing in that way.
Fairness, there's been times even this season. You think of that second half against Leicester, second half against Spurs, performance against Chelsea and United.
Yeah.
I'm thinking second half at Fulham, where we have seen that brand of football this year. So it's still in there.
It's dwindling though. That's the thing.
But I
isn't
think
it?
if you just going back to sort of the early noughties team, as well as all that quality, had power, right? Do you think, Adam, in sort of like the mid to late noughties, Wenger become a bit obsessed with overseas models like Barcelona? Because it was suddenly like people like Vieira went and the physicality in the side was never replaced. Suddenly you were looking at all diminutive figures and it became quite tiki-taka. And it just
Without
didn't have
the backbone,
it didn't have the same impact. You knew that they could go away anywhere over the winter period and might get beat.
No, yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that. It's when we lost the core of, like you were saying, the physicality of the side, and they were never really replaced. The thing that marked Wenger out when he first came was his ability to find players who either hadn't been successful abroad or perhaps had gone slightly under the radar and turn them into world-class talent. And I think increasingly he tried too hard in a way. I think, like you were saying, he tried to perfect football, and it would almost be a running joke I'd have with my mates, talking about how, you can't, like, a player will get to the edge of the box, and Arsene Wenger wouldn't let them shoot. You have to have at least 50 passes before you can have a shot, and that kind of thing. And there was a search for perfection, which I think sanitised Arsenal's football for a long time and compromised winning fundamentally, definitely.
Onto the current team.
Oh, good.
Sorry, mate. How many? Let's start with the manager, because I think I've said on a couple of the previous pods that although it feels kind of doom and gloom at the moment, I can see some comparisons to Pochettino's first season at Spurs, to your Emery's first season at Arsenal. I think some of the reaction has been a bit over the top, and he certainly deserves a second season. It felt like in the first half of the season there were noticeable changes in terms of intensity, running numbers, and then that felt like it tailed off. Was there a reason why you think that happened?
I think, yeah, you're definitely right. There was, at the start of the season, there was a real difference. You could notice it in terms of the intensity and the pressing and the sense that there was a game plan. Like, even in the first day of the season, it was a defeat to Man City, and there were some pretty abject individual performances on that day. But the way Ramsey was being used sort of behind the striker to press the City defence, and then he got hooked off after sort of 55 minutes or something like that. So, yeah, there was a sense that Emery wasn't afraid to make changes, and we saw that in the first half of the season especially. He would regularly make substitutions at half-time. In terms of why that stopped, I think there were some key injuries to our squad that have gone overlooked for quite a lot of the season, especially Rob Holding and Bellerin. Because the improvement in Rob Holding, especially individually at the start of the season, was amazing. He was becoming the centre-back that I think Arsenal fans had sort of hoped he would be able to be. And Bellerin, obviously, at right-back, when your backup is Jenkinson or Lichtsteiner, the drop-off there is huge. And also in the attacking department, Danny Welbeck, even though people sort of laugh at him, he's injury-prone, he doesn't score many goals, what he offers is the intensity that Emery was trying to instill in the side, and that physicality that we were talking about lacked so often. He brings that in bucket loads. He's got stamina, he's got pace, he's strong, he can play either wing or up front centrally. And that sort of squad depth meant that key players weren't being rested at times, and then the intensity takes its toll as you get into sort of February, March, when it just completely collapsed. Really, we looked so lost.
Spurs
at
had
times
the
towards
same
end of the
problem in
season.
that first season. It got to about March. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? I said, you've asked the players to work doubly hard. Eventually, you're going to fucking burn out.
Burn
So
out a little bit.
But these were players as well who weren't really working anyway, as
Yeah.
we know the season before. Adam, how many players in that squad are generally safe and will definitely be there next season?
Do you mean how many would I keep?
No. How many players you'd say now? I mean, we could say probably Leno, Bellerin.
Yeah.
Who else
Leno,
is
Bellerin,
Socrates,
probably,
Socrates,
Torreira.
Holding, Torreira, Guendouzi.
He seems to like Iwobi. He seems to like Iwobi.
You know,
But I think maybe you don't
Yeah.
have any other options. That's why.
well, yeah, but I think Iwobi is good, and he signed a contract last summer. But I mean, if someone came in with 15, 20 million for him, I can see him being sold.
The front
it's a
two,
slim
obviously,
list,
you'd think
really.
are safe, but if someone comes in with big money for
it's
them,
probably worth saying now that we're recording this on Wednesday the 5th. Obviously, it's going out on Sunday the 9th. Last night, Aubameyang changed his Instagram status and removed all links to Arsenal. Nobody knows anything
Yeah, I
more
saw
than
that.
that at the moment. Are you not aware of this,
Wait,
Adam?
no, you saw it. You said-
No, I did see it. But,
Imagine if I just shot that bomb at him.
No, God, yeah, I'd walk
Switch
out.
off. Switch off.
I mean, some
but-
people are saying that obviously it's going to be for the kit launch. Although I don't know why I'm not on Instagram myself. I don't know why he'd remove everything.
Yeah, I'm
you'd
not sure
mentioned,
about that.
I know you'd mentioned some of your tweets recently about China. Do you think that's something that could come back around?
Well, he was close to joining from Dortmund in 2017, and in the window that we signed him, he had an offer from a Chinese club before we came in and put up more money. So it's not like he's the kind of player who wouldn't go there for competitive reasons or anything like that. So if an offer of sort of, I don't know, what would you guys say he's worth? I'd say 60, 70 million probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
only probably a little bit more than what you paid because he's about 29 now, isn't he?
Yeah, he turns 30 in a couple of weeks, so yeah.
Yeah, I don't
But,
think you can put him higher than 80, no.
No, 60,
so
70. If you get back what you paid for him, you had a couple of season and a half and 40 odd goals.
Yeah, and if that
Take
kind
it.
of offer comes in for him, you're never going to get... It's basically you either sell him now or you keep him until no one else really wants to buy him.
See,
He's at that sort of age.
It feels like with the front two are genuinely top draw strikers in my opinion. I know he didn't perform last Wednesday on that, but my instinct as an outsider looking in is that Emery doesn't want to play a front two, and therefore it's a little bit of an imbalance of the squad when you've got young people like Nketiah coming through and other people that could potentially play the position. You sell one of them and suddenly you put in all that money back on the transfer budget to spread it out into the areas that they really do need. And I think that might be one of the decisions that's being made. Would you be happy if you start next season and it's just Lacazette?
So if we sell Aubameyang, we have to sign wingers, essentially. Because Emery, like you say, Emery's never really played two strikers. He's always used a sort of a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3.
He had some success with a diamond, though. I'm thinking against us and Chelsea over the winter period.
Yeah, but then again, I think that was due to... I think that's quite a lot that was down to Ramsey and the role he played just behind them and pushing on beyond them. But I think he wants to play one striker. And of the two, I was talking to some people on Twitter about this yesterday, and of the two, I would keep Lacazette because I think he's more versatile in terms of what he offers as a forward. So yeah, if we sell him, we have to buy wingers essentially to support Lacazette because he can't do it all by himself.
Yeah, you're right. I'm conscious of time when we do have to talk about Arsenal from an FPL point of view a little bit as well.
We've just spoken about it, Aubameyang and Lacazette, that's it.
I was going to say, yeah, that's the conversation finished pretty much.
My opening point was going to be that I think of the top 6 clubs, Arsenal have the fewest FPL options really to go to. I think United kept Rashford, Pogba, some of the defenders were a little bit cheaper, and Luke Shaw. Some people had Jesse Lingard for a while or Martial. There were options at United. Chelsea as well, defensively, were always reasonably solid, and their defenders seem to get BPS and attacking returns. Arsenal had two options, Lacazette and Aubameyang.
Well, yeah, even if you look at the ownership numbers towards the end of the season, I mean, no Arsenal player finished the season at higher value than what it started. And I think Kolasinac was owned by about 6%. And Leno 4%, and other than that, it was just like Aubameyang and Lacazette. So it was no ownership. Are there guys? I mean, you kind of mentioned Holding. Maybe it could be say 5 next year. When's he fit?
He's doing training at the moment, so he should be fit. He'll be fit for the start of the season.
Okay, Bellerin presumably comes back into the conversation, I would have thought.
Yeah, but he's. I think it was his ankle ligament, or he's got a serious injury, so he's going to miss the start of the season.
Was he out for the start? Fucking hell.
Yeah. It'll be a couple of. I imagine it'll be a month or two before he's back up to sort of full running speed.
What about a friend of yours, Alex Iwobi? I know you like him, Adam.
Yeah, no, I do, but
he's cheap.
He was. What was he? 5.5 this season. Yeah, and I think if he can keep his spot in the side, which sort of he was rotated much more heavily towards the end of the season. I think he's a really, really good player. But the problem is that what he lacks is end product, and that's sort of what you're after in an FPL asset.
Yeah, 3 bonus points all season at Iwobi. 2 of them on the last day of the season, which was also his only double point haul.
Oh, look at the stats coming out. He's prepared for an Arsenal session. No,
I did look at Iwobi's. I mean, Iwobi had, I think, 8 assists overall, which is market value in FPL.
Yeah, one every 4 weeks, 3-4 weeks is not bad.
The problem is there's so many ones in there. I think if one of the front two went, he stays at that sort of 5.5 area and cements a place in the team. Yes, I think he could be an option next year.
For me, Aubameyang was going to be a set and forget if he'd stayed as my main striker. And if he doesn't, then Lacazette could quite easily just fill those shoes as a set and forget, because I really want to not muck around with my premium assets next season so much.
You will.
Yeah, but it doesn't prove to work, right? You hold them if you hold them throughout the whole season and just captain them when they've got decent home fixtures. In the end, if inevitably it'll play out. If Aubameyang leaves, which looks maybe likely, then Lacazette will be back on penalties, you'd hope.
We're only speculating on a bit of social media stuff. There's nothing actually to suggest that Aubameyang is on his bike.
No, of course.
What price, Adam, on the front two? Let's assume they do stay. What price next year on the front two would you be like, I've got to have them?
If Lacazette, I can't see him staying the same price though. That's the issue. If he was 9.5 again, I'd be like, he would be in my thoughts really, really seriously. But I imagine he'll go up. I think he'll probably be 10.5. Aubameyang, I would say, I'm almost tempted, like you said, to sort of go with the sort of strategy of just keeping him in, regardless of his price, because I can't think they'd put him up at. Will they put him up at what Kane was at the start of this season? Will they give him a serious hike?
I think they'll probably both come in similar. I think Lacazette maybe 10, but I could only see it being higher than that if, say, we knew early that Aubameyang was going. I think Lacazette at 10, if you knew he was going to start every week as the main striker, you can certainly see him getting minimum 15 goals, minimum, and then it becomes a serious conversation. But over the season, I was looking at some of the numbers this morning. That Aubameyang proved the best value for money out of the two in the end.
Of course. So there's only really, at the moment, there's 2 other players. If you're going with Aubameyang, it's a choice of Aubameyang versus Aguero and Kane. And possibly maybe next season, Salah gets chucked into that mix if he gets reclassified as a forward. All of the other 3 were...
One.
Sorry?
Sorry, I was just saying, if Salah gets reclassified as a forward, that sort of completely changes the discussion.
Of course.
Because then you can't afford. I don't really think you can have a team with Salah and Aubameyang both as strikers in. Whereas you could possibly say you could have, if Salah remains a midfielder, you could probably fit them both in. But if they're both forwards, you can't. I don't really think you can have them both in.
See, Salah. How many points did Salah clock up last season? 250, 260, something like that. So if he's reclassified as a forward, Liverpool kept how many clean sheets? 22.
I think so, yeah.
And he scored 22 goals. So there's 44 points that you can write off straight off because he's getting one less for each goal and not getting any points for clean sheets. Suddenly he's back down to that low 200s number. And so if he's the most expensive of the four and he's getting 210 versus Aubameyang's 2 million cheaper at maybe 180, 190, you never know. That does change Salah's ceiling on what he can get in terms of points. But of the four, Aubameyang is the most nailed on, other than Kane's just going to be expensive. Isn't he going to Real Madrid or somewhere anyway? If Tottenham sell Kane, that would make our choice in FPL so much easier, wouldn't it?
The fuck are you talking about, honestly?
You going to keep Kane next year?
Yeah, well, this Adams pod, it's about Arsenal. He doesn't want to hear about
talked about the
Spurs.
two Gooners that are available.
He doesn't want it rubbed in about who I've got and who he ain't got, has he?
Oh, he could do what that defender did 18 years ago, whatever. Ooh.
Well,
it's only fucking 18 years ago. That's the point, isn't it? Living in the past, mate.
Come on. What about signings? Who would you really like to see at the Emirates?
Harry Kane.
Apart from Harry Kane. Because he's already been pictured in
he is an Arsenal fan after all.
Yeah, he's been pictured in the shirt already. So
he loves scoring against you and all, mate.
Yeah.
That's true. Who doesn't? Let's be fair.
Yeah, it's true.
Who would I like to sign? Some defenders would be nice, I suppose. You could put in a plank of wood instead of Mustafi, and I'd probably take it. There are some wingers we've been linked to who have been really interesting, but the problem is they're going to cost a lot of money. So Nicolas Pepe from Lille, I think, in France, he's had an amazing season. He's quite young, but he's going to cost sort of 50, 60 million euros, that kind of figure. But if he were to come in, he'd be one I'd look at quite seriously. There's a guy from Sampdoria called Dennis Pratt, or however you want to pronounce it. He's a mid... Well, it could be. Who knows? He's a midfielder who's... I think he's 25-ish. So he's not young, but he could add some creativity to the side. I think there are some... There are going to be a lot of young signings. I'd imagine there are quite a lot of.
You've got to get into a market below the top level.
You mentioned Dennis there. What was?
No, I don't mean that insultingly either. I just mean you need to think smarter in the transfer market.
Yeah. Was Suarez on loan, or did Arsenal sign him in the window?
Fuck all. He did about as good as Kim Kallstrom, didn't he?
Was he on loan, or do you own him?
No, it was just a loan signing. It's funny because
he's gone.
Like in Arsenal circles. This is how bad our January was, that there were serious debates about whether we should have an obligation to buy in Denis Suarez's loan clause. That was how bad it was, and thankfully we managed to get out of that. So yeah, it was only a loan in the end.
Okay, so he's gone, because I was going to mention what happens with him. Is there any hope that he might do anything next year, but clearly not?
Adam, before we let you go, a question to close. How will you be feeling about Arsenal in 12 months' time? What are your expectations over the next year?
My expectations are that I think we'll finish fifth again. I can't see us.
Do you honestly think you're better than Wolves, Everton? No, I'm kidding.
No, I thought you were going to mention United for a second.
Well, that was I was just going beyond United for the crack. So you think you're still stronger than United, right?
I think the only thing keeping me sane right now is looking over at United and thinking, God, they're in an absolute state. They're going to fucking
spend, aren't they? We say it at the end of nearly every pod. They are going to spend.
They're going to spend a lot of money, but they're going to buy the wrong players in the wrong positions, and they're going to be coached by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who I don't think he's the right man for the job, and they'll probably sack him at some point next season. I don't think he stays the full season. So I think their turmoil will be the only thing that means we finish fifth. In terms of pushing onwards above that, it depends a little bit what happens with your lot at Spurs. I know Christian Eriksen's probably going to go. Alderweireld, I'd imagine, would go as well. So it depends how well you reinforce. Maybe Chelsea slip up a little bit with whoever they get to replace Sarri. The issue is that we're relying on other people's failings to finish higher than 5th, basically.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't argue that. You know what we've hardly done during this pod? I don't know how it's not happened. Ozil.
Just leave him be. He's out, right? No one wants to talk about that guy. You may as well let him leave or offload him or do what you can, because you don't want him to stay, do you?
No.
Okay, that's it then.
I think he's...
What else is there to say about him? He's just not... He's not worth the money, and he's not worth keeping at the club. It's bad culture.
Just one final thing. Do you think his wages have caused some issues internally?
They have. No, they definitely have. Like, it's the reason why you're seeing rumours about Lacazette going to Barcelona and Aubameyang going to China, because the players have seen he's got, I think, maybe 4 or 3 league assists since he signed that contract. And players are looking at someone like Aaron Ramsey, who's done a lot more for the club, and seeing that the club aren't willing to sanction a big contract for him. Meanwhile, there's Ozil, who is playing once a fortnight, pun intended, and not playing very well when he does. And they're thinking, well, hang on, I'm doing much better than this guy, and he's earning double my wages, effectively. It's caused quite a big issue, even though I think Ozil's liked in the dressing room. Financially, it's an issue.
Of course he's liked. He's got Fortnite on the go all the time if anyone wants a game. I think the club panicked with the Sanchez sale, didn't they?
Yeah.
Like, we can't let them both go. I think there was a panic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They'll unwind, hopefully, this summer out of that situation, and we'll see what happens.
Would you let him go on a free? Because I keep saying that.
I think... Well, I mean, there's talk that we're going to have to subsidise his wages no matter where he goes. There was talk that we might just try and loan him and take like £1 million, £2 million fee or something like that, and pay a bit of his wages.
What, for 3 weeks?
I don't think
£1 million loan fee covers his wages for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how mad the situation is.
Yeah. Adam,
it's crazy. I don't think you can afford to let him go for free, though.
I think you've done well. You were fortunate on this podcast that my team didn't win last Saturday.
That's true. To be fair,
to be honest, I would have offered to cancel this if we'd won.
It would have been a tough recording for sure.
Yeah.
No, fair game to you, mate. Top stuff as ever. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for all the articles you've written this season, and we're looking forward to hearing more next season. We're going to be getting you on. We're hoping to do much more of this with the correspondence next season, video and audio and all the rest of that kind of stuff, of course, which you'll be a massive part of. Other than that, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for you in terms of Arsenal in the transfer window, and hopefully it won't be as downbeat as sometimes Arsenal Fan TV is. Anything else to that, James? Just tell the listeners, where can they find you on Twitter? We did mention it
It's at 35who on Twitter. So the 3 is spelt out in letters.
Perfect.
Just to make it super easy.
Awesome. James, anything else to add?
No. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Serge. Cue music, man, child.
Ciao for now.
Messi, ancora 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 Messi.